Okay. And don't forget, you go down here. You're unmuted. Just wait.
Good afternoon and welcome to the presentation for the Master Gardeners today. It is going to be on the ABCs of fall gardening. I'm Carole MacMullan. I have been a Master Gardener with the North Fulton Master Gardeners for 7 years. And prior to that, I lived in Pennsylvania and I taught biology for 35 years. And I'm combining those two interests today in presenting this program for you on fall gardening. And I've been an avid gardener my entire life. And obviously I love to play in the dirt. And I've been playing the Georgia dirt for 14 years. And when I'm not playing in the dirt, I like to volunteer at Assistance League of Atlanta with their philanthropic programs. And again, going back to my years of teaching, I am involved with 2 scholarship programs. Today, as I said, we are going to begin with this presentation on ABCs of fall gardening. And I think you can just feel the change of the seasons. The temperature is going down. We're getting probably a lot more rain. We've had a very plentiful amount of rain this summer, but normally in August it's arid. But we're getting all this rain now and things are cooling down. And if you go in the grocery store and you get into a casual conversation with somebody at the grocery store, first thing they're going to say to you is, you know, are you enjoying this change of season? And along with the change of season, this is a good picture. You can see all the colors that the leaves provide, and that just kind of changes our whole mindset, our color palette change and everything else. So we will move forward with this presentation. Now, what am I going to get into today? Well, we already started with the introduction. I'm going to talk about tools. Then we'll get into leaves, because obviously if you see the picture there and when you think of fall, you're going to think leaves. So what are we going to do with them? Best practices. Pruning will be another topic. And then this is the planting season. If you go to the stores, the nurseries, the big box stores, you're going to see lots of trees for sale and shrubs and flowers. And we'll talk about those flowers and trees. Then, of course, the fall season always has a frost. When does that happen? And then the cleanup and the fertilizing that you might want to do in the fall. Then we plant bulbs sometimes in the fall, and we'll talk all about those bulbs and then how you'll be richly rewarded in the spring when they actually bloom. So you're going to plant them now, and then you have to wait for the next 2 seasons to pass before they actually bloom. Then one of my favorite topics is containers. I love containers, but it's time to change that visual appeal from the summer to the fall appeal. And then finally, we're going to talk about native plants And I'm going to have some suggestions about reading about native plants and attracting fall birds. By having natives around, you're going to have food source for your fall birds. Okay, let's start. Okay, the first thing, as I said, that's going to come to anybody's mind when they think of fall, they're going to think about leaves. So what do we do with those leaves? Well, back in the day, before we had all these high-powered tools, was just the traditional and laborious way was to rake. But raking does have an advantage, just like, when you don't comb your hair, it gets all ratty and everything else. So the grass sometimes just enjoys having it fluffed up a little bit, and then you get rid of the leaves. Okay, but if you have less time on your hands, you obviously want to go into something that's going to be less laborious. Let's go into mowing. And when you mow those leaves, look at that heavy leaf cover right there. If you start to mow those, what problems might you encounter? So let's go through this best practice. All right, so you can take that lawnmower, and if you don't have a lot of leaves, yeah, hallelujah, just go around and you take your mower, if it's a mulching mower, and you just mulch those down into little pieces, and they decompose quickly. And as a result, you're going to get good fertilization for the grass. But if you have a very heavy leaf cover and you start to mulch, you are going to be in trouble because it's going to be so thick, the root system is not going to get the oxygen that it needs. And so there's another technique we can use. It's called capture and release. So if you've got that really heavy leaf cover on your grass, you're going to want to maybe actually collect those leaves and use them somewhere other than on your grass. Now, as I said, you want to get those leaves up. I think everybody realizes that you don't want to wait till spring, because those leaves are going to block out sun as well as air from reaching the roots and the soil, and that's going to spell trouble. You might get some fungus growing. So if you want to, investing in grass is a very expensive process, and it's replacing it is going to be expensive and time consuming. So as I said, if you've got that mulching lawnmower, set it to about 3 inches. Or use a lawnmower with a serrated edge to do the mulching. And the mulching, as I said, is really important because that decreases the size of the leaves, and that will increase the rate of decomposition, because you want that to decompose to get those nutrients that are locked into those leaves into the soil. You want that then to decompose in the winter and then to enhance the spring growth. Another thing that you might not even have thought of is that as those leaves are being decomposed, it keeps that soil warmer. And that is going to be really important when you want to go and plant. We'll talk about soil temperature and how that is important to success in getting trees and shrubs and plants that are going to be planted in the fall. All right, also your decomposers. What are those decomposers? We've got good bacteria, bad bacteria, so please don't give them a bad rap. I know with the COVID, we're thinking about viruses, bacteria, but there are good bacteria. We're going to talk about those, and those little worms. They all enhance the decomposition process. Now, another thing that we think of in the fall is pruning. Okay, you've got to have the right tools. So let me go grab my tools here. All right, here are my handy dandy tools. Okay, let's first of all talk about bypass shears. This bypass shear I've had for maybe 20, 30 years, and it's very, very beneficial. I have, once you've invested in this, as I said, I've got this for 20 years. Now they come in different, they can cut through different size tools. This one will cut, different size branches. This one will go through a branch of about 5/8 in diameter, inches in diameter. And then you have your anvil pruning shears, which are more like scissors. And you only want to use those basically when you cut flowers, because if you try to cut through even a small branch, you're going to crush it. And that's not a good thing. You want it to look like that picture. You don't want to damage the structure of the branch. Now, here's the next tool that I have. The next tool, you can see I've graduated in size a bit. These are loppers. They are bigger because they take on bigger projects. And so that is for your larger branches. So there we go. That is another tool. Now, one of my absolute total favorite objects that goes everywhere with me, it's in my wheelbarrow at all times, is that mattock or the pickaxe. And with the soil, you know, I come from the north where we've got this wonderful lush soil, and you don't encounter this very compacted soil that we get here with lots of clay in it. And if you're in a new subdivision and that subdivision has removed all the topsoil and has left you with clay that has been packed down by all the machinery that built the homes, this is something I highly suggest. Buy, if you don't have one and you buy it, try it out for weight. You don't want to get anything that's too heavy, because if it's too heavy, you're not going to have the agility to use it the way you want to dig the holes. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. All right, now another very handy thing that I like on my wheelbarrow, and I think everybody, because of the COVID, has been sterilizing things. So this is probably something that you have at your house. These tools should be cleaned after you encounter a disease. If there's a disease branch, you don't want to spread that disease to other branch sides of that particular plant or to another plant. So I'd highly suggest that you have this and make it really convenient for yourself and get that out there and clean. And then do as I say, not as I do. Sometimes I am so tired from hours of gardening that I don't always come in and clean my tools, but that's best practice. Bring in those tools and clean them. Now, we have all those tools. Now we're ready to maybe prune. Okay, now what do we prune? And I love this picture. This picture I found is like pruning 101. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Let's take a look at this. All right, what do we have here? All right, we've got maybe I have a holly bush, hollies sometimes, okay? I just pruned a holly bush. If you've got two branches rubbing against each other, it's not a good idea. So you want to get rid of one of them. It says this one's weak. So lop it off right there. And then sometimes you get these little weaklings that come off of a side branch. Those little weaklings are called water sprouts. Lop them off. Goodbye. All right, so we got rid of that. We got rid of that. And then sometimes you have these little side stubs that kind of form. And if they're near the bottom of the tree, you want to get rid of them. So lop those off. And then suckers. Suckers really diminish the nutrient value that the mother plant gets, because they are competing with the mother plant. And these are not even productive plants. So get rid of them. Do not feel badly. Get rid of those things, particularly if you have crepe myrtle. And I have a grafted twisted cherry. It's just some kind of little tiny cherry tree. And it keeps getting these suckers. And I'm out there, you know, lopping them off. So there you go. That's pruning 101. Now, what is pruning? Pruning is not only just that science that I went over with you, but it also is a combination thereof of science and art, because you want to shape it so it looks good. Now, classic thing, you know, my neighborhood has a lot of people that have gardeners, and they come in and they want to make everything into a poodle. And as a result of that, they're removing sometimes flowers, and it's just, you know, it just the gracefulness of plants. So it is an art to actually do the pruning. So you've got to kind of keep that in mind. Now, crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtle, you see people out there pruning them. When's the best time? Well, it's mid-February. Now, I'm a master gardener, and I'm going to get my hand slapped for even mentioning this, because we were drilled into our head when we took the class that crepe myrtle should probably not be pruned. That's called crepe murder. So by doing this, you are going to diminish the productivity of the crepe myrtle, but in the process, you may prevent it from reaching 20 to 30 feet, which may not be your expectation. So you want to do that before spring and early spring, and you don't want to prune in the fall, because if you prune in the fall, that might encourage new growth, and then the frost will just come in and zap out the new growth. Now, roses, they also are pruned about the same time. You want to get rid of any old or dead wood. And then, of course, once you do that, you want to clean those pruning tools. You want to get rid of any kind of growth about the size and diameter of a pencil and get rid of those. And you probably want to get down to about 5 really strong branches coming off the main root system. But I would tell you to please go to some kind of YouTube video to get the proper visuals for pruning roses. It can be a little tricky, and I don't have time to go over that. And again, please use your bypass pruners. Don't use those Advil pruners because you can crush those canes. Now, camellia, most of the time, the best thing to remember is wait for them to bloom. You want to see them bloom and then prune them. So that's true of camellias. And you want, again, to, the camellias can get really big, and in the interior, you might have some dead wood in there, and you want to, get rid of those dead branches and things in there to give it air so that it can breathe. And azaleas, again, you want to do the same thing after they bloom. That's when you want to prune. And you want to do all of this pruning in Georgia. I looked this up. By July 1st, I have some encores that are blooming now. And if you cut off the new growth off of encores, so be careful. Encores, maybe you should even do the pruning by June, or you won't have that fall. And really, encores, a lot of people think that they bloom all the time. No, they bloom and have a big burst of bloom in the spring and another one in the fall. And mine are just absolutely exquisite right now. Okay, now I'm going to kind of put boxwoods and holly together. They're used a lot in landscapes here in North Fulton. And a lot of what I'm saying today is going to apply to the lower 48 states. Boxwoods do grow in the north. They were introduced by the very early settlers back in 1652. And there are, because they're so loved, there's about 160 cultivars. People love them because they're evergreen. That means they're going to be green all year, and they're going to look good out front. Sometimes you put things that are going to lose their leaves and everything. You want to put them out in the back of the yard so that you just have this constant good looking front yard. Boxwoods and holly can pretty much be pruned anytime through the fall. You don't want to prune too late in the fall because, the frost is going to zap those new growth, and you want to give it time to harden before the frost. So I would suggest that you do that now. Don't wait till a little bit later. Now, here's another glorious plant that I see a lot in North Fulton Master Gardeners' gardens, as well as, just my neighbors, and it's called Pendulum. Pendulum, this is being subjected to a lot of poodling. I see these Pendulums. I like them kind of just, doing their natural thing. They do get big and they do need to be pruned, but you don't want to prune them now because in the spring they won't bloom, and a lot of people don't even realize they bloom. This is what the flower looks like. It's sometimes called the fringe plant because it has these pretty fringy looking very hot pink flowers. They bloom very early in the spring, so that's just, delightful. They just kind of announce that spring is coming. And if you've got property that you may have purchased and it's got, some older plants on it and they just haven't been pruned, you can prune to about 1/4 to 1/3 of the size, but only do that much at one time. Don't overdo, or you just may find that the plant is going to belly up and die on you. Now, hydrangeas, I'm just going to spend just a short amount of time on. I love my hydrangeas. I keep planting them because are just absolutely gorgeous. But I do want to prevent you from doing the wrong thing. And that's why I'm just going to spend a moment telling you what to do. There are, I think, actually 5 types, but I'm only going to mention these 4 types. The first 2, the Hydrangea microphylla and the Queeraphoria, which is the oak leaf. These are both produce flowers on old wood. And by old wood, that means that if you cut the wood that's currently on there, you will not have any blossoms next year. So be very, very careful in cutting off any wood. What I do with the microphylla, I wait for them in the spring to come out of the ground, start producing their leaves, and then I see some dead branches in there. I get rid of those then. And they say the oak leaf is pretty much, just try to avoid as much as possible pruning those. And then you've got the other two that I have here, the arborescens, and then you have the limelights, which is the, and both of those will bloom on new wood. And so you can cut those 10 to 18 inches from the ground now. If you want more information, Linda Klein is our expert, our North Fulton Master Gardener expert. She's got an absolutely exquisite garden with hundreds of these hydrangeas. And she is the person that I would suggest that you go and review her presentation that was done in the spring of 2020. And you can go to the YouTube channel, Master Gardener's YouTube channel, to where it's archived. Okay, now everybody is thinking fall. When is fall? Obviously, it's a countdown. 1, 2, 3. 3 days it is going to officially be fall. It'll be fall equinox. We'll have an equal number of hours of daylight and of darkness. And that goes, of course, still till December 21st, 22nd. At that point in time, right now the temperatures are cooling. And then I want to point out, don't forget, it's going to cool the soil. You're going to have less insects. You're going to have more rainfall. And this is a time that just has the right kind of confluence of weather pattern and weather that it's going to help you when you plant to get that plant established and its roots to start to grow before winter. And so now fall is the time to plant. It's a win-win for you. It's a win-win-win for the plants. Now, you bought that plant, you've invested money into that plant. So you have to invest time. If you don't invest time into planting, you will not reap the benefits of that plant. You want to give it the absolute best start. It's like a newborn baby. You want to give that baby the best start. Okay, now what do we do? Okay, we go and we buy this new tree, this new shrub, and we have to decide how far are we going to dig and how big are we going to dig. So the circumference needs to be 2 to 3 times the size of the root ball. Put it in there and make sure that you've got plenty of room around it. The depth, you don't really want to go any deeper than the root ball itself. And you want to invest time. It might take an hour with this kind of compacted clay that we have and all the stones that might be in there in the amendment that you have to do. It may take you an hour. So, plan out your day and, before you decide to plant. And again, this picture is worth 1,000 words. That's an X. X that out. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't put it too low, too high. This is the correct way to do that. So reviewing some of the things that I just said, when you're going to invest in a, $40, $50, $100 plant, you really want to give it its best start. So you want to kind of do a walk, spend some time, walk around your yard, make sure that you've got the right amount of space for the tree. Remember, it's going to grow, the shrub's going to grow, and you've got to figure out if you've got shade or if you've got sun, you've got partial sun. You want to look at the plant tag and decide, is this the best spot? Then you want to evaluate your soil. You want to, if it's very, compacted soil, you've got to, get that, get your hands in there and get your gloves on, get your hands in there and start to amend. You want to remove the large rocks. Sometimes I just get a bag of compost manure and then I use the bags to put the rocks in and get rid of them because there's just too many rocks and those roots can't compete and get down there and get their, they want to get their root system down into the ground. So what I would suggest that you do is mix. Do not totally get rid of your native soil because they have to grow in that native soil once they get past, the area that you've dug out for them. So mix up your native soil, put some manure in there and work on that and just get it into a nice, good texture. You want to feel the texture of it. Now, I have some suggestions. All right. So getting some more visuals here. All right, so now we've got this soil that we've got here in Georgia. And the soil, maybe we need to amend it. All right, so we want to amend it. And I'm just going to put my glove on here really quickly. And you want to be able to, put your hand in there and just feel like you're a root, pretend you're a root, are you going to be happy in there or not? Okay, here's a couple of rocks, those I would get rid of. There's some little guys here. I just keep this in there. Okay, now the next thing to do is to dig the hole, as I told you, and you want to put water in that hole. And when you put water in that hole, if that water is not percolating and not draining down into the subsoil, I have a suggestion. There is this stuff. Oh my goodness, I don't know. Ooh, that was probably not a good idea. But anyway, it's got little stones in it. It's called Mr. Nature. And those little stones will help to percolate it down through the soil. Now, here again, another picture. I love pictures. I was a biology teacher. What can I say? I'm a visual learner. And so for all the visual learners out there, what's it going to look like? If you've done the right job, you've devoted the time and energy to get this tree started. You have put the tree, the root system in here, and you have made the proper size hole here. You can see how it's more than 2 to 3 times the diameter. You're at the ground level with the top of the root ball. Now, if you've got burlap and wire in this tree, because it's a really big, expensive tree, you have got to remove that. I would suggest you put the root ball in the ground before you put the amended soil in there and cut away all that metal, in the root ball and get rid of the burlap, because again, how are those roots ever going to find their way out of that root ball? They aren't. And I know that I bought a Japanese maple at one point in my yard, and I invested a lot of money and it was absolutely exquisite, but it was just so confined to that root ball. So work on it. Now, I have found that some of these azaleas, the young azaleas, and some of your plants have such nice tender leaves that attracts the deer, and the deer want to munch on it and make it into salad, into deer salad. So I would suggest that you buy, if you've got deer problems, which most of us probably do, unless you've got a fenced in yard that keeps them out. You have rabbits too that want to munch on those nice new leaves. So I would suggest that you spray them with one of these products. They are not poisonous to dogs or cats or whatever. It just smells bad. It probably has coyote smell or something, and they stay away. Now, I don't have time for fall vegetable gardens. Again, I am going to refer you to a YouTube presentation that it was archived from last week, in fact. And then there is another one that's coming up on winter vegetables. So I would suggest that you might want to take a screenshot of this. This gives you some information about vegetables, which I am not going to have time to discuss, unfortunately. And here's a good website through the UGA extension. Now, oh, look where we are. We're ready for questions. Mary, are there any questions so far?
Yes, ma'am. We've got a few of them. The first
Okay.
one is, how frequently should I have my tools sharpened?
Wow. Well, it depends on how avid a gardener you are and how often you use them. I'd say like once a year, but if you've got the tools at home, you've got a good way of doing it at home, which I do. I don't really pay anybody to do it. I just sharpen them, and I use mine a lot. I've got a lot of trees and they're getting older and there's a lot of dead stuff. I've been getting inside them. I feel I get totally enshrouded in some of them and try to get inside and cut away all those dead branches inside and give them more air and more exposure to just a good airflow.
So you can just kind of tell that it doesn't cut when it stops cutting really cleanly through.
Yeah, and you can usually tell. Yeah, it talks
Okay.
to you. The tools talk to you and they say, I'm not doing a really good job. And I'm going to damage your tree because I'm not sharp. Okay, same thing with your hair. If you cutting shears, you're cutting your hair and they're not sharp. Your hair is not going to look too good. Good question. Okay, we have more.
When is the best time? When is the best time to prune a fig tree?
Ooh, you are completely out of my zone. I've never had a fig tree. I have a friend who's just in love with her fig tree, but I don't know. I have to
Okay.
defer that. Mary, do you have the
Okay.
answer, or we have another master
I
gardener?
don't
in
have the answer.
room?
That's actually, I don't have the answer. That's actually my question, and I'll Google it.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience is that I prune them
After the fruit, yeah, usually
After the
after they
fruit.
flower, after they fruit. Yes,
Okay.
probably the answer. Okay,
All right.
more?
I have a low growing gardenia shrub that is getting quite wide. Can I cut that one back now? Or since it bloomed a while ago, do I need to wait?
What kind of tree is it or bush is it?
It's a low growing gardenia.
Oh, gardenia.
Yeah.
Okay, that should have been done after they bloomed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I would not be doing that now because it's going to form new growth, and new growth means that the frost is going to just take it away because it won't have time
Just
to
wait
harden.
until it blooms. Wait until it blooms again, and
Yeah, that's a good rule of
Okay.
thumb. Any more questions, Mary? Or should we move on?
then just a couple more.
Okay,
Can you go back to the previous slide real quick
yes. Okay,
on the
let's
fall
go
vegetable
back.
garden?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Give them
Okay.
time if you want to take a screenshot of that, because I didn't have time. That's the answers are all there. Last
Okay.
Sunday and then October the 24th.
All righty.
Okay.
And then let's move on, and then we'll try to get to the rest of them at the end.
Okay, we have time for more questions. So if you have questions and you didn't get to them, well, we're going to have more at the end. All right. Do you like the slide? It's so colorful. These are some of the fall blooming flowers and shrubs. So let's talk about mums first. Okay, we've got a wagon in here, and that wagon's filled with all those mums, and look at the colors. Okay, those are our fall colors. You know, right now everybody's starting to think in tones of yellows and oranges and reds, all those rich fall colors. And the mums, if you go into any of the big box stores and nurseries around, you'll see lots and lots of mums. So those are just, when you think of fall, you think of leaves, you think of mums, you usually think of pumpkins. And again, pumpkins with the orange color, but now they come in a variety of colors, and some of them have some really interesting textures to them. Okay, another plant that's blooming right now are your encore azaleas, and they come in a variety of colors. So if you're into pinks, they bloom pink. If you're into orange, they bloom orange. If you want white, you can get white. If you like dark pink versus light pink, there you go. You can go to your stores and look at all the color combinations, and they will basically have two major blooms, one in the spring and one in the fall, maybe a few blossoms in between. And then what is this guy? This guy is a Japanese anemone, and they come in pinks and whites, and they like a little bit of shade. Not a lot of shade, but a little bit of shade. I put them in too deep of shade, and they don't bloom for me, but I have them blooming right now in my garden. Then we have the tea olives, and the tea olives reward you with flowers as well as a wonderful, wonderful fragrance. So keep that in mind. They do get big. They do need to be pruned to keep them under control because they want to get bigger and bigger. And then, of course, when you think of fall, what do you think of? I'm going to go grab my next little prop. Okay. My next little prop is I went and I asked my neighbor if I could cut her grasses. So we have different kind of grasses. Look at this really, elegant looking thing, that's blooming, and they bloom in the fall. And if you notice your grasses, they just look like grasses, and now they get their flowers. So this is a flower. And then I didn't have this one, so I had to go beg, borrow, and steal from my neighbor, but I didn't really steal because I asked. And then this is one that grows in my garden, and it's really appealing because it's called the leopard grass, because can you see how it has kind of a variation of color here? And it gets a less distinct looking flower in the fall, but they're all blooming and they produce seeds. I'll tell you, I've got seeds all over the place. So they are in their reproductive mode right now. Okay, now let's talk about some other things that are blooming. I take a walk every single day with my dogs through a neighborhood greenway, and they've let it just go natural. And the coreopsis, which is right here, this beautiful little yellow flower, they are hybridized. You can buy them in the nurseries and big box stores. But the naturally occurring ones, the native ones, are blooming now, and they are just proliferating in this walkway, and they have just been exquisite. And I've just enjoyed watching the bees, just bees everywhere, butterflies everywhere. And it's really made me, along with a book that I've read, a very strong advocate for natives. I don't see as many bees in my yard as I see on that pathway, and I just would cringe if they would come and mow them down. Okay, another native is the bee balm, and it tells you, obviously, you know, it attracts bees. Right now, you're going to have these asters blooming again. They attract bees, and they have seeds, and all of these have seeds that the birds are going to welcome you for planting. Here's the Joe Pye weed. There's a lot of that too on my walk. I see that. And so you might want to actually carve an area out of your yard if you haven't gotten into natives. And I'm going to tell you a book to read if you're interested in natives. Now, I hate to even show you these pictures, you know, who likes to talk about death? Well, plants die. And of course, the first frost is going to oft a lot of plants, and that's going to be the end of them. You've got some evergreens that are going to completely stay green 12 months out of the year. But all of your perennials, your perennial flowering plants are going to be, you know, exiting. And when is the first frost? I looked this up. In my zone, which is 7A, the first frost is October the 24th, and the last frost is going to occur approximately on April 12th. Okay, April 12th. I had to get some coaching here because it's covered up. All right, and then the total growing season that we have here in 7A is about 195 days, and that's why I love being here, because I like to be a four-season gardener, and I can garden almost all the time here in Georgia because it's just, the weather's just so lovely if you can get past the heat and humidity for the summer months. All right, now preparing your garden for the fall and the winter, we should be thinking about, you know, what do you want to cut back and what don't you want to cut back? Now, the question is, should all perennials be cut back after the frost kills them all off and they're dead, like we just saw that picture? Well, the hostas kind of take care of themselves. They just, leaves just turn into mush, and then you don't even know that they're there. The peonies are another story. You should, using best practice, remove the dead tops of them, dispose of them. Do not put them in your compost pile. They say that they will encourage fungus disease, so just get rid of them. So get a bag, get rid of them. Your daylilies, they kind of like, you know, signal the fact that they've done their flowering for the season and they're finished, and they just start to die off, particularly around the perimeter. They start to die off, and eventually those need to be lopped off and, you know, discarded. And then you have the ornamental grasses, which are absolutely exquisite right now. Eventually you are going to want to cut them back in late fall because you want to enjoy those pretty blossoms that are on there. Like Lauropathy, those also can be cut back late in the fall. And then the irises, I'm going to talk a little bit more about them. There's a picture of cutting them back into a fan shape, and that is the proper way to do it. You want to make them into a fan, cut them back, discard the remains, don't put them in the compost pile. All right, more suggestions. Now, irises. What do you do with irises? They do eventually occupy so much, you know, they take up space, they reproduce, and they just, you know, encroach upon each other, and they start to diminish in their productivity. So you want to dig them up, and you should do this probably every 3 to 5 years. And then sometimes the center is going to die out. So the best way to do this, if you've got a pitchfork, talking about tools, I don't have that tool to show you, but that might be a good way of getting down into the irises. Now, irises grow very close to the surface. You want to make sure you don't damage them. You want to get way underneath where you don't damage. Notice the root system over here. Whoops, I got to backtrack. The root system here, you don't want to damage it. You don't want to damage the rhizomes. And so what you do, you just, you know, get the clump out, and then patience. Patience is a virtue. Take your knife And if you need to, you may have to cut these apart. But when you are successful in doing this, you're going to remove any of the damage that's been destroyed by iris borers or any rotten portions of this. And if it looks like this, it's time to replant it. So you can, you know, if you're going to pull up a clump, you're going to have a lot of these. And this is what it should look like if you've been successful in your project. And then you want to put those about 12 to 18 inches apart. Okay. That. And then if you want to refer where I found all this information is in Homes and Gardens, Better Homes and Gardens, April 2013. Now, here are some other fall bloomers. You've got your Russian shade that, or sage, excuse me, Russian sage has been blooming all summer, and now it's just asking you to cut it back. You may want to cut it back a little bit, but it's probably your best practice just to leave these plants that I've listed here for the seed value that will come from them by just leaving them alone until spring. Most of the plants you want to just get rid of. They're ugly. They're just all mushy and you want to get rid of them. But these I would suggest you hold off in pruning them down until spring. So that would be your coneflowers, your coreopsis, your butterfly bushes, your Shasta daisy, the garrya, the Russian sage, and then your natives. Containers. Okay, this is near and dear to my heart. I love my containers. I've got containers everywhere, and I love to change them out in the season. And right now, the ones that I have for summer, they are begging me. Actually, they're saying, you know, that they've just reached their, you know, their glory days are over. They're not looking that healthy right now, and they are ready to retire. And they are ready to let another plant take its space. So those annuals, I hate to take them out. You know, it's heart-wrenching to take them out, but here's some suggestions. What you can plant in their place. I love these cabbages. This is a kale. Look at the colors of some of these vegetables that you can put into a container. And then Halloween's coming up. And so just buy a pumpkin, or maybe you've got one that's made out of glass or something, and add it. And so you've got thrillers, spillers, and fillers in here that makes a nice looking fall container. And here's another beautiful fall container. Again, look at that. Now, when I make my containers, I like to add pansies also, because pansies are enduring. They will take frost. It's amazing. They just have such resilience, and they keep blooming. So pansies are one of my favorites. I like to combine them with the cabbage, and that is an actual cabbage that grew to a very large size by the time that it was ready to retire and let some spring flowers come in. So there's a cabbage, and here's another variety of cabbage. The colors, that sort of that bluey green, and look at all these wonderful pansies. Whoops. Okay, here's more ideas. Just use your imagination with these different plants. And you can see here, again, pumpkins and so forth and so on. So then what you can do to make these plants that you've planted continue on. Here's another one. Here's, you can see these look like little miniature pansies. These are violas, and they come in a variety of colors. And here you can see an actual pot that exists in my yard. I love blues, so there's a blue pot. And then, whoops, we did that one already. Oh, here are two pots that I have, and I have a box of my goodies in here. All right, these are my goodies. I'm going to just get rid of some of my other props here. All right, so I have these that I have appropriated for, obviously, Halloween, and I just put them in my container. You can see my container here, and it definitely looks very seasonal, very much ready for the Halloween season. Okay, here's another thing that I can stick into my pots. And then I also have some of my little friends that I love animals. I was a biology teacher, and not only did I teach about plants, but I taught about animals. And here's something that I found, I think at, you know, Home Goods or someplace. And you can see that I've incorporated it into this container. And then here is another cute little addition that you can put into one of the pots. So there's some ideas to give you a seasonal look. Now, we want to transition into Christmas. Okay, all you need is a bow. You might just find some branches that you can cut up to give color. You can add some, you've got evergreens out there, you can beg, borrow, and steal from other, well, not steal, but ask your neighbors. If you can take just a few of their greeneries, add that to a pot with your bow, there you got it. All right, also pansies come in white. All right, you can take that, you can step it up for Christmas, add a bow, and then you can also step it up with another one of my goodies. I'm going into my goodie bag here. All right, so another thing that I love for my garden and pots, I like to add these. So can you imagine taking that box? Sorry, my dog must want to go out, so we're going to let him out here. So anyway, here's another suggestion. Just add those to there and you're going to have your Christmas, one of the joys of Zooming. All right, now, there we go with ideas for the holidays. Now, bulbs. Now that I live, I should say, in Georgia, in zone 7A, I am dealing with a dilemma. When I lived in the north, I could plant pretty much any of those bulbs. But when I'm doing bulbs here in Georgia, I basically have decided that daffodils are the way to go. I have a deer problem. Daffodils are poisonous. And so that's basically what I'm planting. And you have to plant in the fall in order to enjoy these in the spring. And you can see that there are bulbs that bloom early in the spring, in the mid-spring, and in the late spring. So if you want a constant color palette of daffodils, you can plant some early daffodils. Those are usually the little guys. And then you've got some other ones that are going to take you through the mid portion of spring and then late spring. And then there's another one that I really like that grows very successfully here in Georgia. And it is called Spanish bluebells. And it's blue. I love anything blue. So there's some suggestions. Also crocuses, they do pretty well here. Snowdrops do pretty well here. Oh, I am going to discourage you. Here's one thing that did very well in the north. Does not do well here. I've tried a couple of times. The stems just never, they're supposed to have a really tall stem. They don't get the tall stem and they just don't flower. So please don't invest, even though they are an enticement. You might see them in stores. Do not buy allium. I will tell you, they don't do well. Tulips are gorgeous. If you don't have deer, that deer love them. And so they will dig them up and they'll munch them and you won't ever see any flowers. And they are annuals here in Georgia. So you have to plant them every year. So if you're willing to invest in them every year, then that's the way to go. Okay. Now, here is how to plant. When you get a bag of daffodils and you want to plant them, you want to decrease the amount of time that you have to spend on this project. So what I'd suggest, daffodils go in the ground about 6 inches below the ground. Dig a hole 6 inches below the ground. And then once you've got that dug, just put all that soil over there, amend it, make it nice and lush, put some, maybe some bone meal in there for fertilizer. Lay them out and visually you can see them that, they're 2 to 3 or 4 inches apart, and put them, in a visual so you know that that's the way they're going to come up. They aren't crowded or whatever. And keep in mind, put them down in the ground there and then cover them up with good soil and, just speak to them and tell them to do well. And come spring, you'll be well rewarded with flowers. This, you may want to take a screenshot of this. I like this. It kind of gives you an idea of depth, but whenever you buy bulbs, they will tell you exactly how deep to plant them and how many inches apart. Here you can see we've talked about the irises. They go just slightly below the surface of the ground. And then you've got your smaller bulbs like crocuses. They don't go very deep. And then you've got your glory of the snow. And those go a little bit deeper. Again, that's a small bulb. And you can see the daffodils probably go down the deepest. The tulips a little bit less, maybe 5 inches rather than 6 inches. So that is something that you want to refer to on the package of the bulbs that you buy. Here's an example of little guys. This is early spring at my house. There's a stone that kind of, enhances the look of this. I think I started out with 100 of these. They're little tete-a-tetes, and they have just multiplied and created this gorgeous palette of yellow in the spring. And then here's a mid-season one. This is called Carlton. And then this is Ceylon, which comes a little later. I love this because of that punch of color. And be very, very careful, because there are only certain daffodils that will grow in Georgia in 7A. If you're up north in a different part of the country where it's cooler weather, you can plant daffodils to your heart's content. You can probably plant every kind of daffodil known to man. And then we're going to end this program talking a little bit about attracting birds. Okay, I talked about natives. Natives will give off seeds throughout the winter to nourish these birds. But if you want to supplement, wintertime's a good time to supplement their diet. Here's some of the common birds that I get at my feeder. Here is a chickadee. The first guy here is the chickadee. Here's another little bird. This is the house wren. They'll stick around all winter, and notice that it's got an insect here, or like some kind of worm or a caterpillar. So they don't really come for the seed, they come for the suet, along with the woodpeckers. And this is a downy woodpecker. Look how pretty it is with a little bit of red. This is a tufted titmouse. We have both the female and the male cardinals. And then we have a blue jay here. And that's pretty much it for today. Here, you may want to do a screenshot of this, or just come to our YouTube channel and just look over this again. These are the references. Here's something about native plants. Here are plants for birds. We also have the UGA site, and just look over those, and those will help you out. And I have 2 books that I would highly recommend. One is Month by Month Gardening in Georgia. And then the other one is one that I am almost finished reading, and that was suggested by a fellow master gardener. And this book is transformative. I have completely abandoned a lot of my ideas about conservation. I was a biology teacher, and there are new rules to follow in conservation. And please, if you're interested in natives, this is a go-to book. Please purchase this, go to the library and take it out or whatever. It's called Nature's Best Hope, a new approach to conservation that starts in your garden. And that was just published in 2019, just before COVID. All right, I'd like to thank all the partnerships that we have. Here are some partnerships that we have, people who have helped us spread the word. And here again, here's some social media platforms that have helped us out also in spreading the word about our presentation. I would like to thank you so much for joining us today. We do have time for some more questions. So if Mary wants to come on, and if she's got some more questions for us, do we have some additional questions, Mary?
Oh, do we have questions?
Okay, go for it. What do we have?
All right. The first thing that I wanted to do is to clarify the hardiness zones. They actually have shifted. So we are now in zone 7B and 8A. So with the changes in the climate, we have now moved down into more of a warmer hardiness zone.
Well, I want to dispute that. I live in North Fulton, as far up in North Fulton as you possibly can get. And we do get winter storms, ice storms, and we do get snow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so once in a while, like every 10 years, you do get a frost. And when I bought this house with my husband back in 2008, we had about 35 Indian hawthorns, which start in zone 8. You know how many are left in my property? 0. They all died off. 100% when we had that bad ice storm. So I will go with caution. I say where I live is 7A. If you live in South Fulton, you could go 7B. I would really, I think 8 is really, really pushing it.
Okay.
Because you know how temperatures fluctuate.
Yeah, and that does make a lot of sense. Okay, so the first question, getting back to pruning, what is the best way to sharpen your own tools?
Well, I have this thing, I don't even know what you call it. It's just an implement. I don't have it here. I'd show you. It's just an implement, and it's got like metal, rough edge metal on it, and you just run it across that.
It's almost like a nail file, but just a larger one, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of circular. It kind of looks like a bat. It looks like, something you might use it with a drum set, like a drum. What do you call the drum things? Help me out, Mary. Anyway, I would go to the hardware store.
Yep.
I'm going to defer that to the hardware store. You go in there and they'll help you out, or Google
Alrighty.
it. We can always Google. Okay, so you
Yep.
stumped me on 2 questions. Okay.
All righty. What is the name? What rocks do you recommend to help percolate water? Do you have anything?
Okay. The product, I really, really embrace this product. It's called Mr. Nature. They sell it at Scottdale Farms, which is right down the street from me. And it's got little pieces of shale in it. And my daughter has a newer home. And when she bought that home, we found that a tree that was in the front died. We invested in a cherry tree and it died. And when I dug it up, the hole was filled with water. The drainage there was terrible. And so I took out all of the natural soil that was there and I supplemented it with this Mr. Nature. And that loosened it up and created a more successful flow of water. And I didn't want to put another $100 tree in there. So I put some grasses in there that are more tolerant of the wetness. But
Okay.
yes, it's a great product.
While we're asking the questions, one of the listeners has asked to show the reference slide again. So if you could pull that up and then I'll just keep
References?
going.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, if they want to do a screenshot. Oops, back. Oops. Oopsie, oopsie. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
And if they want the information on the 2 books, I'll go to that. I'll give them a minute to take the picture if they want to do a
Okay.
screenshot.
What fruit trees are easiest for the Georgia area?
Fruit trees?
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, well, that is another one I'd suggest that you Google. I don't really have any fruit trees. I mean, basically the trees that I have here are for flowers. I've got
Right.
cherries. I know Bradford pears really aren't for fruit, but those are, they're no longer considered a plant that you want to purchase. I don't even think you can buy them anymore, but they didn't really. Well, okay, peaches, obviously, cherries. I guess there's some kind of cherries, but again, I think they need to Google that. You stumped me again, Mary.
Okay. I can say I have a fig tree in my backyard and I can't keep up with the figs. That's a great one.
Oh, good. Well, the climate is really good here for them.
Yeah. Can I prune a leggy blood good maple tree? If so, when is the right time?
Well, early fall, probably. Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't, late fall, you're getting into the problems then again. You don't want to, if it's a tree, is it a tree?
It's a tree,
Like-
yeah.
Yeah, trees don't like to be pruned very much unless I, go back to that, pruning 101 slide. Hopefully they took a picture of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully I
Yeah.
can say this one right. My muley grass just falls over, has never bloomed. The leaves are green, but they just lay on the ground. What should I do?
The grasses, the ones that
Yeah.
have the pink flowers.
I assume so.
Yeah, probably fertilize them.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one bush that I was going to completely give up on because it had lichen actually growing on it, and I gave it some fertilizer in the spring, and wow, it's just happy as can be.
Okay. And would that then be the same? There's another question. How do you prevent fall grasses from splitting in the middle? Would that be the same answer?
Yeah, you want to prune them back in, around February. You want to prune them. You want to get rid of all the dead stuff in there. Sometimes, if you've had them for 10 years or so, I have lots of dead stuff, and I got in there. It put, long gloves on because, they can really cut you up, and get in there and just really give them a good prune and get rid of the dead stuff that's in there.
Okay. When is the best time to prune a tea olive?
Tea olives bloom in the fall. So you definitely don't want to do that in late summer. You don't want to do it in the fall, and then you don't want to do it in late fall. You don't want to do it in the winter. So I'd say probably in the spring, because usually you say after they flower, but boy, after they flower, we're going, you're getting close to the frost time.
Mhm. Okay. Can you start ground cover phlox from seed? Where do you buy seeds, and when would you plant them for a spring bloom?
Ooh, I've never really done that. I used to go out and buy the ground cover.
From Lowe's?
Yeah, and they're usually, ground covers usually spread pretty rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you buy the package will give you the information. But if
Okay.
you've got some place to start them in your home or your basement or with a grow light, that might be the way to do it.
Okay. While we're on seeds, is it recommended to buy bulbs and seeds from mail order sources, or should we buy from local places? What's your recommendation?
Well,
there?
as I told you, the allium, I have seen it for sale in the big box stores, and I've seen allium bulbs even in some of the nurseries. They don't grow here. I personally like a company called Color Blends out of Connecticut, and I can talk to the owner. He's very personable, and he will tell you exactly what will grow down here. And everything that he has sent me has prospered. The bulbs are always, they come from the Netherlands, and they're just hardy, bulbs. So I buy usually most of the stuff locally, but bulbs I do not. And also, if you like allium, I did see something called a, what was it? Drumstick allium growing in a garden that I visited back in spring. So that I'm going to try that this year because I love allium,
Okay.
but it's a smaller version of the allium.
Okay. On the peonies, when you say to remove the dead tops, are you meaning the dead flowers and the brown leaves? I always cut mine down to the ground. Is that necessary?
Yes, I would cut them down. Yep,
Okay.
the whole way. Yeah,
I do
they'll
that
come
with mine
back.
too.
They're perennials. They'll come back.
When you change out your plants for a new season, do you replace all the soil?
What was that again with the soil?
When you change out your plants for a new season, so like going from Halloween to winter time, do you replace
In the
soil?
containers.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I will take it out and I will keep some of it and put fertilizer in it, and then I mix it with some new stuff. You want to, give it a little bit of a boost.
Okay.
So you do want to put some fertilizer in there. I would definitely not continue to use it year after year after year. And what I do with it, if I do take it out, sometimes I'll just completely take it out and I'll just take it into the yard. It's good soil. Don't throw it away. Put it in the soil. I mean, supplement your clay with it.
Okay.
Okay.
My figs don't bear any fruit. What am I doing wrong?
Oh, wait a minute here.
All
I'm
right.
going the wrong direction. Okay. What doesn't fruit? I'm sorry, I was
Fig.
changing the
Fig tree.
slides.
My fig tree doesn't bear fruit. What am I doing wrong?
Oh, you're out of my
Or does
league
it
with the
need?
fig. With the
Okay.
fig. Yeah, might be, the pot.
I know that there are.
Maybe it's outgrown its pot if you have it in a pot. I have a friend that has one. And the soil, yeah. Yeah, fertilizer. Could be the soil, the
Okay.
fertilizer, the size of if you have it in a pot. Do you have yours in the ground?
Mine's in the ground. This is not my question. It was one of the listeners.
Yeah. Okay,
So
because
I'm not
I have a
sure.
friend in Pennsylvania that loves hers, but it won't survive the winter, so she brings it in the garage in the wintertime. So if we have anybody from the north that has one in a pot, it might outgrow the pot.
Yeah, she just responded. It's in the ground. I know that there are male figs and female figs.
Oh.
So let's see.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Sex among the figs.
Yeah.
The same thing with holly. They have sexes too. And if you don't have a male and female, you won't get any berries.
That's funny.
Yep.
Okay. When is the best time to plant boxwoods?
Probably the fall. Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Get them out there before the frost, though.
Okay.
Oh,
We're
but
getting
then the
close.
soil, you want the soil temperature. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Soil temperature. wait for the soil temperature to get a little bit cooler.
Okay. What bulbs do deer dig up? Her dogs were barking and she didn't hear what you said.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about the dog. Okay. So your bulbs, what was the question again about the bulbs?
Here.
Oh, the
what
deer. Oh, the deer
Yeah.
will not eat daffodils. They're poisonous. They will not touch them, but tulips they adore. And they will dig them up and they will chomp them down to the nibbles, and you'll never see a tulip. So if you've
Okay.
got a fenced in yard, go with the tulips, but remember, you're probably going to have to plant them every year.
Okay. Are plastic or ceramic planters better? And do you have any great places to buy
Well,
them?
plastic is good in one regard only, and that's the weight.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a clay pot, it'll retain the moisture and you won't have to water as much. But they're heavy. And so you've got to kind of, you got a balance scale here, and you got to decide which way you're going to go. A lot of people are getting those fake looking ones that are made out of like a foamy material of some type because of the weight situation. If you don't, they can get to be 50 pounds or more, some of my containers.
Ceramic.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one more question.
Okay.
And it is, when will this excellent presentation be up on YouTube? And I believe the answer to that is tomorrow.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So please look at the bottom information, future classes, and a link to register. You can go to our webpage, which is www.nfmg.net, community classes. And then you can also go to Facebook page and the YouTube channel to go through any archived presentations. We go back to 2020. And also we've had, I think we started last year in the fall. So we have a fall series from 2020, and then 2021, we've got the spring series and the fall series, and we'll have a winter series. So thank you everybody for being part of this program today.